Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Below the Yellow Line podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Samuel Stubbs, joined by a very special guest today. Ryan, if you would, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey guys, Ryan Ellis, driver of the 3 Chevy Xfinity Series for Prime Racing. So, I've been racing for a long time, but really excited to be with Prime this year.
Glad to have you on the show, Ryan. Gonna jump right into it here. This past weekend at Pocono, really good weekend for you and Alpha Prime as a whole. Solid P18 finish. How was your weekend at Pocono? It's called the Tricky Triangle, and not for no reason. It's a very difficult track, but you guys managed to get out of there with a solid finish despite all the late chaos. How was your weekend, in your opinion, at Pocono?
Yeah, it was awesome. I personally love Pocono. It drives kind of like a road course. You can be aggressive. You can, I think for the most part, it rewards aggressiveness. Like turn 3 is a little bit of a patience track, but I had a lot of fun. It's a little bit of a motor track, and we don't really have the motor that most of the guys that finished ahead of us have. So I think we made the most of the day, and for a small team, for us to have the car, I think they said not a scratch on it, so that's really good. That car we turn around and probably be leaving the shop in about 8 days to head to Michigan. So a top 20 is always a good day, especially at a track like that. We expect to run really good at the short tracks and road courses, but not so much at the Poconos and the Michigans. Those are a little bit different.
Yeah, absolutely. Tough track for sure, but you guys managed to get out of there without a scratch on your car. Very impressive considering how chaotic everything was in the closing laps. Going from looking back at last week and now looking forward at this weekend, I know Road America is one of your favorite tracks, one of your best tracks on the circuit. How much are you looking forward to going back there, and what do you think your expectations are for the 43 team at Road America?
I'm really excited. Statistically, probably like one of my most average tracks, but that's it's kind of hard to on the road courses to really look at just purely the stats because
Absolutely.
As we've all seen, it's just a wreck fest, especially when you get towards the end. I was just looking at data, or not data, I was just watching YouTube, so it's not quite data. From our race back in 2019, we were 9th, I think, or 8th, with about a lap and a half to go, driving for BJ McLeod. And last time I drove there, we didn't have brakes, and the car was stuck in reverse.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we got pushed off by the push truck, and it was stuck in reverse. I didn't think we were actually going to be able to fire off, so we lost brakes every 2 laps, so it wasn't too easy to make speed that day, but overall we've typically had a decent amount of speed there, so I'm really excited. Like, this is the one I've kind of had marked off the whole year. The more excited I get for these races, the worse they seem to go. So I'm really just not thinking about it. With the repave, we really don't know how the track's going to race. We just know it's going to be really fast. And with controlled cautions, I think is what they're calling them, the 3-minute breaks, we can't make up too much time on pit road. So I'd like to say a top 15 for sure. But I mean, I'd be lying if I wasn't really gunning for that top 10 this weekend. It's so competitive now. I think we can race our way into the top 15 for sure, and then after that, it's a little bit of attrition.
Yeah, let chaos take its hold and see where it leads you. That's how road course racing seems to be nowadays. Speaking of Road America, and I may be wrong on this, and correct me if I am wrong, but I believe either your first start in the Xfinity Series or one of your first starts was at Road America, and it was driving for a guy and an owner that I think is or should be a role model to a lot of people, especially incoming team owners, in Jimmie Means. Could you just maybe explain, how much a mentor means, especially to somebody like you who was at the time kind of new to NASCAR, and especially, just how Jimmie and mentors have kind of helped you throughout your career?
Yeah, I had aspirations to race in NASCAR probably my entire life growing up. I just kind of got away from it in my late teens, early 20s, not necessarily from a goal standpoint, but just from what I was doing. I was racing Grand Am, and we just happened to be at the track the same weekend as the Nationwide Series back in the day, and I had a mutual connection through a radio show on Vince Racing Radio that I was actually a co-host on, and I found out that Jimmie was looking for a starting park guy that weekend. Didn't even know what that meant. And it's like, hey, I'm down to drive a Nationwide Series car. So kind of got that deal together last minute, and it was really, really cool, just having a NASCAR license and being, I think it was in college then. I was like, this is pretty freaking awesome. And just getting to know Jimmie and his story was so cool. He's definitely a mentor to so many in the sport, I think, including Dale Jr. Talks about him a lot. And, it was a cool opportunity. I worked with him a good bit. I think in Montreal, Road America, Watkins Glen, and I think, like you said, Road America was the first race that we made. It was so competitive back in the day, and it is now again, but it was so cool to work with him, and just that guy hustles, man. I don't know how old he is, I don't even want to guess, I'll probably offend him either way, but he's pushing tire carts around, he is grinding, he's working on everything, and he's passionate, and it was so cool to work with him for sure.
Yeah, Drew Means is a workhorse. Even as he gets up there, he's still, he's one of those guys that, you look back at the 80s, 90s, early 2000s era of the sport, and it's not to say guys now aren't hardworking, they are, but he is like the definition of like a NASCAR man's man. Absolutely old school and never quits. Absolutely never quits.
Oh, yeah. No, the other guys you can kind of put in that same category, not from an age standpoint, but just that their hustle is like a Carl Long, like Mike Harmon, Morgan Shepherd, like Derek Cope, like a lot of those guys that just, you're going to see them in the Xfinity or Nationwide Garage or whatever, like pretty much their entire lives, because it's all they know, and they're definitely all heroes of mine.
Absolutely. And those are guys, that we kind of describe them as journeyman drivers, and those are the ones that I feel like, like yourself and like so many other guys that have come through, especially the Xfinity Series nowadays, that just, they're going to work as hard as they possibly can, because it is all you know.
Those are the kinds of guys you want to earn respect from, I think,
absolutely,
because they have a lot of respect in the garage.
Yeah, if you can get respect from those guys, you've kind of made it, for sure. Moving forward, moving forward from kind of the start of your career to the current career, and I think I kind of describe you as a veteran now. I mean, you've been around for almost a decade or over a decade now in NASCAR. But since moving to Alpha Prime, you've had easily, your best stretch of races. I think you got your career best finishing your first race with them. So it's been a huge switch for you. You've been running so much better. The cars have a lot of speed in them, especially at road courses like you mentioned. So was there like a flip switch? Was just the culture better at Alpha Prime? I know that some people talk a lot about, but just, what really flipped that switch for you and made you so much faster when you went to Alpha Prime a few years ago?
It's not the sexiest answer. It's just the cars and people, and that's not a knock on anybody I've ever driven for before. But the motor program that we have, I know I was sounding like I was complaining about it 5 minutes ago, but just having ECR motors, whether they're owned or leased, was some of the best motors I've ever run with. And the people with the cars are fresher than most of the cars that I've ever raced before. The mile and a half program was really, really phenomenal last year before the rules changed. It went from being our strong point to our weak point, unfortunately. But it's so cool just to be part of that team, and I described it, I think, after Vegas, which was the first race with them. It felt like a video game, because I never had an opportunity to race against colleague racing, and Allmendinger, I was Brett Moffitt's sort of PR guy the year before, working at a place called Click Marketing, and it just didn't feel real, because I've never been able to just compete with them before. And we did the same thing the next week at Phoenix, and then throughout the year, obviously we had some struggles at points, but felt like every race was kind of the same book. So it's really cool to be part of it. And obviously, I think a lot of drivers have had opportunities like that where they get an opportunity and they make the most of it, and a lot of guys want to keep moving up, and I think we have a good thing going here at Alpha Prime, and hopefully we can keep building that forward rather than team hop, because I'm really, really happy with the group I got here.
Absolutely. You guys just keep improving every week, and it's races like Pocono that kind of makes the NASCAR world kind of stop and look and see, wait, hey, that team, we classified them as an underdog, but they're on the rise. They're coming for sure.
Yeah, we had a couple bad luck races in a row. We had Clutch go with a few laps to go at Nashville, and then it was going the whole race, unfortunately. Finally went, and then we had an issue in Atlanta with 2 to go, so we would be on like a streak of 4 top 20s. I know everybody has their ifs, but we were like 4 laps away at both tracks from top 20. So it sucks in that facet, but I mean, if you think of it that way, 4 top 20s in a row, it's a really good streak, and we're heading into what I think is our strong point, at least over the next 5 weeks, excluding Michigan, which is probably like my least favorite track on the schedule.
Yeah, you got a lot of road courses coming up because you go to Road America, and then you have Watkins Glen, Indianapolis. Anything can happen at Indy. We saw that last year, so a lot of good chances for you and your team. And then Daytona, which is always a wild card.
Yeah, anything could happen at Indy, that's for sure. I had Mark lose brakes behind me last year and assassinate me. How Tommy was running. I didn't get to race as much last year, so I'm looking forward to doing it this year.
Yeah. You were just talking about, racing with guys at Colleague and a few years ago and how you'd never really done that before. But before you really got going in the Xfinity Series, you actually were able to drive a few Cup races for BK Racing before they went down. But what did it feel like being out there, especially when you weren't necessarily completely, green, fresh, a rookie per se, but you were still relatively new then in 2015, 2016 when you were making those starts. How, cool did it feel, or how nervous were you to be out there with, the Cup Series stars, especially, you raced against guys rather like Dale Jr., Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, Matt Kenseth. You raced against Hall of Famers, all-time greats. Just what was that feeling like looking up and seeing, a guy that, you idolized growing up right in front of your windshield?
Yeah, I'm so glad I did, my first race when I did, I think it was the 33 at Circle Sport, at Phoenix was my Cup debut, but then outside of that was mostly BK, like you said. I think it was Gordon's second or third to last race in the playoffs, and he was my hero growing up, before Tony Stewart was my hero, and I remember, pulling out in the back straightaway and cleared up, and they were 24-10 back. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty wild, and I literally... I think it was him, yeah. I drove into the fence down the back straightaway, just racing, just trying to give him all the track possible, just in practice, because I was so worried about just wrecking my hero in his last year. And man, it was you weren't nervous, you're not nervous going into it, but then you get on track and you see the 24 in your mirror. That changed a little bit pretty quick, and I got to race with Tony a little bit as well, and that was phenomenal. He was my hero in my teams, and I was probably 7, 8 years old, just because of how many different things he raced and won. And he's an intimidating presence, as everybody knows. The last thing I want to do is get a yelling match with him, like my old buddy Matt Benedetto did after practice once. So it's I was giving him all the room in the world, and I remember we were on fresh tires at BK, I think at Texas or Indy, and I had a chance to pass him, and I drove my butt off to try to make sure I got by him, just to say I passed Tony Stewart once in my life.
Absolutely.
I'm pretty sure I got just by him, and then he pulled away by probably a straightaway and a half, and I never saw him again. But just to go out there and make laps with those legends was so cool. And I can't imagine I don't know, it's just everybody always looks at the heroes they race with, but the kids nowadays that are making their Cup debut, I'm not sure who those people are in their mind, but for me it was Tony Stewart, Jeff Gordon, even Ryan Newman, Matt Kenseth, those types of guys. To make laps with them was so cool.
Seems like a surreal experience for sure. So we talked about Road America a little bit, how that's a track, it's special for you. You made one of your first starts there, but what would you say is your favorite track to drive on the schedule, and what would you say is your least favorite track to drive on the schedule?
They're back to back, and Road America is number 1. It used to be Mid-Ohio, but they took that off the schedule. I have the schedule right here. My crew chief sent me a little, not necessarily for this, but it's our motor driver chart with tracks. I'm looking at it. Yeah, back to back. It's Road America, and then Michigan. Michigan not now necessarily for the way it races or anything, but it's just a motor track. It's an aero track, and if we don't lease motors, it's really, really hard to be competitive there because you're not out of the throttle that much. I think if you're in a lease motor plan and got all the wind tunnel time and the car that's fresh, it's probably a lot of fun to race. But last year it was just frustrating. Felt like we couldn't make up a lot of time. It was me and Josh Blinky kind of just in a prime train, just getting past, kind of sticking together, hanging out. But Road America is kind of the opposite, where there's a lot of variables. You're out of the gas a lot. Obviously, you're shifting. Different types of braking zones. Cars constantly in some kind of transition between, an overhill corner and a downhill corner. A lot of left, right. So it's a really, really cool track that I think takes a lot of talent into play. And I love tracks like Darlington, Bristol, like all the stereotypical ones too. But pretty much any track that you're out of the throttle and have to really drive the car is a lot of fun to me.
Yeah, Road America to me has always seemed, people talk about Watkins Glen as a road course that's long straightaways and then some tight corners, and Sonoma is always the one they talk about as the technical track. I feel like Road America is a great mix between the two. It's got some tight corners like Sonoma does, but then you also have long straightaways and then those slight curves, and also you're racing through, just the woods, basically. It's a track that's unique in its setting for sure. Yeah, it's a beautiful track to race at.
To me, it's almost been a right handle. As weird as it sounds, like in our cars, you can't make up much speed. You have a right hand 90 degree, then you have ESs you can't really pass in without, really getting in a bad spot. Then you got the bus stop, which you can you can make some speed up in, but it's not really technical. And then you got the long right hander, and then do your left, then do your right, and then you're back on the straightaway. So it's not the most technical track. It's probably one of the coolest tracks that we go to, and it's so much fun to race. It's just when you're in underfunded stuff, it's a little bit harder to make up some speed, I think, there, because you're in the gas so much. Same thing with Road America with the longer straightaways, but it's technical enough on the backside that you can really make some work on.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have loved to maybe not do it, but maybe see some of these modern day drivers race at Watkins Glen when they didn't yet have the bus stop, which I know that was obviously for safety reasons, but man, they're flying off 170, 180 into those corners, and that just, to me, that must have taken just so much inner strength to do that. I cannot imagine just how unafraid of everything you really had to be.
Like Road Atlanta before they did that as well, and yeah, Road America is very similar, just in the late braking zones and some of the really fast corners. But I mean, coming off of Pocono, it does feel like, especially on a qualifying lap, like you really have to man up going into the corner, especially into turn one, braking zone. Those types of tracks are a lot of fun. We don't get them too often, and I'm glad I missed the years of the cars that were a little bit more dangerous, 20 years ago, because I don't know if I would have been racing with them there as much. I like the safety we got right now.
Absolutely, glad it's here for sure. Last, I guess, really serious question here. If you had to pick a dream track, a dream scenario, a dream pass that you could make to get your first win and have a Hollywood storybook ending, kind of what would that situation and scenario be like?
That's a good question. I'd say probably, just because I want it to be a track, because I don't have that win, obviously, in Xfinity. I don't even have a top 10 right now. It'd be something really that actually meant something, not taking away anything from the plate races or Daytona, Talladega. I just want it to be a track that I know people respect the technicality of, whether that's a last lap pass, on the outside at Darlington or Bristol, something like that would be really, really cool. And it's so hard to say, because if you win a road course, they're like, oh, he's a road course guy. If you win a plate race, they're like, oh, he kind of lucked into it. So you want it to be something that really solidifies yourself in the sport. And that's what I've kind of thought of it that way, of if you got one race in a junior motorsports car, what race do you pick? And you don't pick the mile and a half where you might have a little bit more of an advantage. You pick the one that you feel like you really earned. And to me, that would be a Darlington or a Bristol, something along those lines, and not a road course as much as I want it to be that, because I feel like I'd have a little bit easier chance there.
Absolutely. You mentioned, the tracks like Darlington and Bristol, and that's the track I'd probably choose. Now, that's a track that, we were talking about Jimmie Means earlier, and that kind of, old school, when I envision old school NASCAR, I envision those guys in the 60s and 70s and 80s ripping the wall at Darlington, with little safety equipment and just,
oh my God, yeah.
I can't imagine. Last question.
No, it'd be different, that's for sure.
Absolutely. Be just terrifying. Last question here. Now, I'm a guy that I typically like, spicy food, spicy sauces. Heartbeat Hot Sauce is one of your partners this year. And I just want to know, as a potential customer, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it's going to put me in the hospital, 1 being I'm not going to feel it, how spicy do you think Heartbeat Hot Sauce is?
So it depends on the one you get. I'll say I'm not a hot sauce guy, but I'm a Heartbeat Hot Sauce guy because they have certain ones that they aren't very hot. Like the blueberry one is like my favorite, and it feels like a smoky barbecue sauce. And I know that's probably not the best way to describe it, but to a non-hot sauce person, it tastes that way to me. And it's just got like a slight hint of heat to it, kind of like the first time I had Chipotle. Like, I don't like hot stuff generally, because the first time I had Chipotle, that was like the spiciest thing I'd ever had, and that's just not saying much for sure. And that was just like the marinade they put the steak in. But yeah, get the blueberry one. Try a pineapple habanero, I think is what my wife likes. But I got the wide mix. And I've tried them all. The ones that are a little bit hotter are definitely not ones that I would put on every single meal, but more of like a hot sauce challenge. But yeah, do blueberry. I think you'll really like that one. Sounds good. Sounds good to me. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. And I wish you and the rest of the 43 team best of luck this weekend at Road America. And if anybody wants to watch Ryan, which you should want to watch Ryan this Saturday, tune into NBC this Saturday in the afternoon. So thanks for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you on track this weekend. Sounds good. Yeah, appreciate it.